Beautiful. Welcome, welcome. Everybody's already hyped of your AC/DC shirt and loving it.
Yeah.
First of all, thank
like
you
it
for
too.
joining us. Maybe the best way would be to introduce yourself to the audience of who you are, what you do, and what your hand upon this game has been. What was your magic on Expeditions Rome?
All right. I'm Fasih Sayan. Well, Dr. Fasih Sayan or Professor Fasih Sayan, whatever. I'm a narratologist, which means a person who makes research into the way stories work, essentially. But I'm also a game designer, and I worked as a lead narrative designer on Expeditions Rome. I pretty much wrote most of the text there. We had two writers, me and Jonas. Jonas was the creative director. And yeah, I am the lead narrative designer of this wonderful, wonderful game. It's the best game of the year every year.
I called it a few times already. For me personally, game of the year because I'm in love with the storytelling, the pacing, and how
Thank
many
you.
twists and turns and just kind of predictable, but kind of not predictable. It's kind of giving you this fake security, and then just comes from the corner and slaps you in the face. And I love that about it. Somebody asked, when is the game based? Like what year or what we're talking about here?
It's roughly 50 BC, roughly,
Mm-hmm.
because like it's set around the time when, well, obviously Julius Caesar was still young. I would say 80 to 50 BC, because we compressed history a little bit. You may have noticed, like there were multiple Mithridatic wars, and we kind of, yeah, for story purposes, compressed stuff a little bit.
So, how did the idea came up with going into this whole Rome setting and not? I know. I mean, we had at the first the conquistadors, then we had the Vikings, and now the Roman age. Was it something personally preference there, like love to the ancient Rome, or
I mean,
why not something else?
We had a bunch of ideas, and this kind of decision, yeah, multiple people reach this kind of decision. Like there is there is what we want to do, and there's also what is commercially viable, and all of these things. And Rome was an interesting era for us, something we wanted to explore because it's not often explored in video games. But also it is it's really popular. Everyone knows about Rome, in yeah, to a certain degree, and as an advantage, as an added advantage, as an extra, we have a lot of written records from the era. Like relatively, I'm speaking relatively because people tend to overestimate the amount of information we have on ancient Rome. We really, like, as we move past 18th, 17th century, the amount of information we have drastically decreases. Like, people have written things, but it's just one guy writing something, so it's not really reliable information. Still, we had a lot of information about Rome and how society in Rome worked, and that was good for development too. So it's I think it's a combination of those factors. Yeah.
Very good, very good. So, what was your That's more of a personal question. What was your favorite storyline or quest line that you might have written? Spoiler alert here. So, who has not played it there or came that far might be spoiled here.
I don't know. That's like asking which one of your children you like more. There are many. I do like the way how the ending, like the way the ending turned out to be. I do like the personal quest lines of the characters, and they all have different, like, it's like people keep asking me which one of the characters you like most. I don't know. It's just I like them all. Um,
That's
but
very good.
what comes first to mind is Cineros' personal quest. I wish it had been longer, because it was like a tutorial personal quest.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about Cineros is he's from my part of the world. Like I live in Istanbul. I was born in Istanbul, and then I also in summer I live in Bodrum, which is modern day Halikarnassos, where Cineros is from.
Yeah, yeah.
And while I was doing research, some historical research, I came across the story of this guy from Halikarnassos, um, basically competing in the Olympiads and stealing the Olympic trophy. They tell him, "You go there, you get the trophy, and don't come back. Otherwise, like if you don't do it, don't come back." His guy's name was called Agasikles, and he didn't win, but he stole the trophy. And I love that story. It's just such a story of that land. As a result, Ali Karnassos was kicked out of the Korean League,
Oh man.
which is a huge thing. Like I have seen a podcast, I've listened to a podcast where one of the people on the podcast was kind of downplaying the importance of this. He was said, yeah, Cineros has a secret, but his secret turns out to be he cheated in a wrestling match. Big deal. Well, people don't understand that the Olympiad was a religious thing. It was a really important thing, and
It was a big deal back then.
it wasn't one Olympiad. Like people tend to think there was this one Greek Olympiad. No, there wasn't. Like different leagues, different city states had their own Olympiads, and the Korea League, the Olympiad was the only reason they were allied. And him stealing the trophy is such a huge offense to that. And I wanted to tell that story and made it Cineros' story. Of course, it's anachronistic. That happened like 400, 500 years prior to Cineros. And by the time our game takes place, Alikarnassos was probably an insignificant fishing village. But
It's still a good story.
It's a good story. Yeah.
I laughed my ass off when that happened. It was wonderful. It was really wonderful. It was came out of the blue. You cheated, and then
It
that
comes
wrestling part came.
out of nowhere. Yeah.
Soviet Marshall asks, "Is the game meant to be realistic in terms of gear, armor, and weapons?"
Yeah. I mean, it is a game. So it's an RPG, and there's a lot of discussion about what an RPG should be. One thing everyone has to understand is it's not a simulation. It's not a documentary. So this is a story-focused RPG. And the other thing is the systems in an RPG, they're like, it's always an abstraction of things. And so we did look into gear from that era a lot. But then we also needed a lot of loot, a lot of different kinds of gear. So we took our own artistic licenses there, just
Of course, because it's a game.
yeah, it's pretty much like that. But it is supposed to be reasonably realistic. Of course, like in a standardized Legion of post-Marian times, people would pretty much use the same equipment, but that's not fun for an RPG.
There's no diversity in it and might get boring. I have a similar mindset when it comes to movie adaptations from books and stuff like that. It's meant to be entertaining. It's not meant to be one-to-one to the real thing, or one-to-one to the book, or one-to-one to historically accurate kind of how they dressed and whatnot. So should be like feeling of progress and be fun. Another question we have from Archer the Boy. He says, as far as I understand, Cineros is based on the real persons. Are the other companions also based or compared to any real storylines and figures?
I mean, I don't think Cineros is based on a real person, for starters. Like, I just took
I mean, inspired how by that storyline.
by that, like Agassikles's story is funny and interesting, and I thought I could kind of make it part of Cineros's background, but that is how not it plays out historically. So the reasons why Cineros did it and how it turned out to be for Cineros is completely different. You could also argue that Cineros is based on Plato, because Plato was a wrestler, and his name is actually Aristocles. His Plato is his nickname,
Mm-hmm.
because he had a very large chest. He was a It literally means Plato, as geographically speaking. And he was a failed wrestler, so he became a philosopher. And I thought, um, that could be an interesting angle there. And the way our characters are designed is initially they're designed to feel like stereotypes, and Sinoros is this
Yeah.
Greek philosopher kind of stereotype. Then we deconstruct those characters because in a lot of games like these stereotypes, it doesn't make sense for this kind of character to be able to fight. Like, Cineros kicks ass, and
Mm-hmm.
how can this old man do that? And then, in thinking about it, we kind of decided, okay, this kind of wrestling background actually makes sense. If anything, it's an amalgam of different backgrounds of people. The others, I don't know. Like Caeso, you could say he's maybe based on Labienus,
Okay.
because of his relationship with Caesar, but not really. Like, it would be like, reading too much into it. We didn't really say this is this guy.
Yeah.
Let us just change his name. Not like Toranaga in Shogun was based on Tokugawa. It's
Yeah.
not like that.
Very, very interesting. Next one is Attila with I'm curious how much consolation work with various historical experts you took before actually starting the writing process of the whole story thing.
Um, a lot, and we did our own reading too. Uh, because of my academic background, I am also well versed in Roman history.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so we we knew a lot to begin with, but we also have had our advisors, our friends helping us with this. We work with archaeologists and historians, because sometimes the things you know to be true are not really true. And archaeologists discover new things every day, and they're like, "Oh, we thought it was like this, but it probably wasn't like that." It turns out. Um, so there was a lot of pre-production, but that continued throughout production as well. We changed
Mm-hmm.
things around. We even examined uh, academic works about swearing, insults. We wanted the insults to be authentic. Um, so most of the insults in Expeditions Rome, they're either in Latin and authentic, or translated from Latin into English. So that's how they actually insulted people. A good example, weird example of this is uh, the word, like the phrase "son of a bitch." We
Okay.
use all the time, and Romans were also fans of that. They said that a lot. You're a son of a bitch. But when they say bitch, they meant a dog. Like, this is like a
You son of a
female
dog.
dog.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So we translate it as, like, if you translate it as son of a bitch, it has a different meaning in English, different modern meaning. So we translated it as son of a dog. That because that's closer to the original meaning of the insult.
I think some of
Um,
that essence is still kind of. I noticed that in my travels through Hungary, they kind of used the dog insults quite a lot, or
oh
like
yeah,
implemented the dogs into insulting. Was
yeah. For some reason, it's a popular insult in ancient cultures, um, they don't like dog offspring, I guess. Um, yeah,
Could be.
it was a lot of that, a lot of corrections, figuring out, oh, this didn't work like that. Uh, that was like a time we were, some text in the game was talking about breakfast and lunch and things like that. Then we realized there was no such thing back then. People ate just once, normally under normal circumstances. Um, and there are things we couldn't put in, because just as we were designing the Chalcedon siege, and I'm from Chalcedon. I grew up in Kadıköy, which is modern day like Chalcedon.
Mm-hmm.
Our level designer Sune was constantly asking me, so how does this place look like? I'm like, man, how would I know? Like, it was more than 2,000 years ago. There's nothing left. We don't even know where the settlement was. But then, just as we were building the game, the archaeologists actually discovered the old settlement,
Oh,
and it was reasonably close to what we made. So we were
that's
happy.
cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I think that exact moment when you have like something created in digital and you kind of like inspire something, and then the real proof comes to it and you compare it. I think that wow moment, it must be really cool
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
as a person to create something like that. Somebody asks, is the game itself going to stay in BC, or will be the story advance into AD or even further with future content upgrades,
Uh,
maybe DLCs?
well, I can't talk about future content yet. There is one DLC coming,
We tried
and
it,
there
chat.
will be more story
Okay.
in that DLC. That's all I can say about it, and it will slot into the story itself, so it will not be taking place after the story ends. It's not a standalone thing either. It will be part of the game, part of the campaign. It will just expand the campaign. Um, as for the possibility of continuing the story, we do have an ending that kind of implies that it's one of the endings. Like, in one of the endings, their adventures, you could imagine that their adventures continue.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if we will ever do that. Like, even if we get to do a DLC, a big DLC that takes place after the game ends, I don't know if we will do a story that continues it, because the story can end really conclusively. You know what I mean? It's just. But if the question is about the game itself currently, no, the story doesn't really expand into AD. It takes place, uh, like, I think within 10 years or 15 years of uh, some kind of time period of that. So we never go to AD years.
I think that alone already gives so much potential to bring in content and like, yeah, stories. Attila asked if you did decide to rewrite a lot of things that you have done already based on the knowledge that you got from archaeologists, historians, and whatnot.
Yeah, like I said, some of it, for instance, that breakfast dinner thing was okay. So this doesn't make sense. Let's rewrite this dialogue. But there were no major revisions due to later discoveries, because we did our research pretty thoroughly prior to production and the writing of the game. The other thing that helped is, well, the way you write this kind of thing, at least the way we write this kind of thing, is not like I sit down and I take a piece of paper and I start writing dialogue. Fasih
Yeah.
says this. It doesn't work like that. You start from the very basics, the skeleton of the story,
Mm-hmm.
the events themselves, and those do not really depend on historical facts because it is a very character-based story. Like you could reasonably put this story anywhere and change the setting. So, and that helped us too. Like the actual writing came in, started very, very late in production, and by then we knew a lot of things about the Roman Empire.
Wow, I'm just mind blown how much work. How many years was the game in production?
I think there was some kind of pre-production period for a year or something, but
Yeah, let's add that as well.
Uh, the actual production, like the full speed ahead production, was 3 years.
Wow. And if you add that prior work and thing to it?
It's closer to 4 years, I would say. But it's vague because at the time we were also like working on another game. So it went a little bit slowly, but those 3 years we were full on making Rome. And part of the reason, part of the production was like, if you know Expeditions Viking and Expeditions Conquistador, you know they're based, they're made on Unity is the engine, and for Expeditions Rome we've changed the engine. It is Unreal. That is really cool because Unreal allows a lot of things, but that also meant we had to rewrite all of the systems and everything. So we couldn't make use of any of the legacy systems we had. So that took a lot of time. Yeah.
But I think it was a good decision that you switched there because I think at least visually you can tickle out a lot of more from that instead of the Unity part.
Yeah, we were happy about it. Like Unity is good for certain games, but yeah, I think we were more comfortable with Unreal. There are some things Unity does better or easier. Let me put it that way.
Probably. Yeah.
But overall, we were happy because of the Switch.
One personal question I have here: is there gonna be ever maybe kind of a photo mode that will take out all the UI and you just enjoy the scenery and maybe can zoom in and look at from the first person? It would be amazing.
I don't know, but it is certainly an interesting idea. Like I would, that could probably be done easily. But there are multiple updates coming out, and we're going to make a lot of quality of life changes.
Oh, I'm excited.
I'm not saying that we were working on a photo mode because I really don't know. But I wouldn't say no way either. You know, it's just unless it's for some obscure technical reason, really difficult to do.
Yeah,
we can probably do it. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. One personal question to you: did you ever try to or had the chance to wear Roman armor yourself and see how how it feels to be in Legionnaire clothing? I'm asking this because I did 5 years. I think it was 5 or 6 years of medieval combat. I'm trained in shield and axe, and I had the chance to be dressed up as a barbarian, be dressed up as a legionnaire, be dressed up as a gladiator. Some of my backhead scars are from the gladiator time, and
right.
yeah. Did you had any chance to experience what you ride, as in maybe even wear Roman clothes on?
Yeah, I did. I did actually wear the standard post-Marian Legionnaire armor, at least a reproduction of it. While I was working on another project prior to this, I was working on Rise, a game called Rise, Son of Rome.
Ooh, we just had to talk about that in the chat.
Okay, so yeah, I worked on that game too, back when I was working for Crytek. So yeah, we had our own in-house mocap studio. And so I got the chance to, you know, try it out. It is not comfortable, but you know, it's not meant to be comfortable.
No.
Do you want to be comfortable or alive? That's the question.
Definitely. That's amazing. Wow. I'm really impressed about every little aspect from it, the love and dedication put into it. So, from what I understand, this is your first project with the whole team on expeditions, or have you been working on the
Yes.
prior ones as well? Okay.
Well, I was briefly, partly working on our yet unreleased uh, Divinity game, but that's on hold, and I was only tangentially working on it because for Divinity, Larian owns Divinity, and they wanted to handle the story themselves, and that's fine. But yeah, this is my first project with Logic Artist. I did help a little bit with Expeditions Viking
Mm-hmm.
as a friend. So that's the other thing. Like Jonas and the rest of the guys, they were already my friends when I joined Logic Artist. I knew them, uh, and they were always joking about it. Like Ali, the guy who runs Logic Artist, was a friend too, and he was always telling
Uh-huh.
me, like, why don't you come to our leave your cushy AAA salary and come to our tiny indie studio? And I was like, yeah, right. But then one day I was like, okay, uh, I guess it's time to make that change. Um, and I did, and I'm happy about it. Like, this was a really, really fun project. It never felt like a job. It felt like we're together in some kind of apartment we rented with some friends, and we're, making a game we would like to play and sharing it
That's
with people.
amazing.
I know it sounds such a cliche, but that was how it was.
And I think that's what you can feel in the game because as I mean, actually, all the expedition games, and especially very strong in this one. Maybe it is thanks to your influence. You can definitely feel the love to the story and the pacing to the story, and all these little nice crooks and nooks that you can and get presented.
Well, I can say it's definitely not because of me. I mean, partly because of me, but Jonas Veva, our creative director, he is a very, very, very story-focused creative director who is a very good writer himself, who wrote the other Expeditions games
Hmm.
all on his own.
Wow.
And it is such a blessing for me to be working with someone like that, because as a narrative designer, you always have these frustrations when you're talking to your creative director and talking to other people when they don't understand what you're talking about. It's like you're talking and there is a soundproof glass between you, and you're so frustrating, so frustrated, and that was never ever the case with Jonas. And part of the reason is that he values story as much as I do. Um, Sometimes even more. And
More in what
and he
sense?
in certain ways he values the integrity of the story and the story
Okay,
world more than
gotcha.
I do. Like, I'm all for making making tiny changes when players do not notice, and he's not a fan of, cheating the player. So we never did that kind of weird stuff for Rome.
Yeah.
Um, it's just more like an RPG, like a standard RPG, instead of a weird avant-garde story game.
Okay.
Um, so, but there is that. The other thing, yeah, he understands storytelling, so it's very easy to talk to him. The other advantage we had was uh, being good friends prior to production, uh, and by pure chance, our style in writing is really, really similar. The words we use,
Oh, that's beautiful.
um, the stories we like, and the our weird and quirky sense of humor is super compatible. So it's seamless. You can't really tell who wrote which parts of the game, and as a result, the game has a consistent voice, and that was really good. That was really good.
Based on that, we just got an compliment from Ilumbar. He says, currently on my second playthrough, trying out the opposite decisions from the previous ones. Really impressed with all the big and little things that change the quest branches in individual dialogues. Some of them I didn't even think had a variation. Absolutely loving it.
Yeah, we try to do that. Also, there's also this weird thing with it. We kind of don't ramble about things in the game. We don't do wall of text kind of exposition. People just talk like normal people. And some crucial character information, like not crucial, but some interesting character information is hidden behind some choices you make. They don't really change the story, but they kind of change your understanding of some of the characters. If you choose that and if the character tells that. My favorite example, tiny spoiler here, is when you're talking to Kaiso about him, you can ask Kaiso about his nickname, Aquilinus. And he tells you that's because that means eagle. And he tells you that's because he would change his enemy relentlessly and mercilessly like an eagle. And then you get the option to say, well, that's a good nickname. You deserve that. And he was like, of course. But you also get the option to say, well, Kaiso, this really doesn't sound like you. And if you say that, and only if you say that, he tells you, well, I guess you're a sharp one. Well, the truth is, somebody, when I was young, somebody made a joke about my nose, and it stuck.
I see, so his face is more like an eagle, not his attitude.
Exactly. So it's a tiny thing. It changes nothing in the story. It's a character moment for Kaiso, and unless you ask that very specific thing, you never know this. So there are a lot of these things, these tiny tidbits, character tidbits in the in alternative dialogue choices.
That is so wonderful.
Yeah.
I love how exactly these little bits feel, even though they're kind of stereotypes, make the characters feel so alive. And we talked, I think, prior on Discord, where you said that when you wrote the whole dialogue, you decided, is the dialogue crucial to move on the story or to tell the player some crucial information? If not, just leave it out, because it's just like a filler, so to say, and it's not important to progress the story or the character progression. And yeah, I think that's what I was at the very beginning saying, that I love the pacing of how the story goes on. It's like constantly keeping you in the loop and not getting kind of, let's call it, boringly stretched out to like, oh, let's make this game 20 hours longer and therefore just put fillers in to keep the people occupied. And it feels good. It feels good.
That is
good speed.
Something we actively try to do, because, as I said, I'm not a fan of rambling games, reading a wall of text and without knowing where it's going, and characters repeating information. So we tried a few things, like keeping dialogue short is one thing, and everyone notices that. The other thing is, the question is, how do we do exposition then otherwise, if everyone is just, says one sentence and just moves along. That was important because your character is not an underling in this game. He is in charge. And unlike other expeditions games, you are a conqueror. You're not a stranger in a strange land that much. So you should have a plan. You should be proactive, not reactive. And that's really difficult if you're in an RPG, if you're the player in a computer RPG. Because that's like, you need to come up with the quest. you can do that on a tabletop RPG with a really good DM who improvises. But computer RPG, you have to write the story. So we kind of cheat by placing crucial information in your dialogue choices. So things the player does not know, but the character knows, those appear in dialogue choices. And that's useful because A, you end up saying those things as a character coming up with that plan, even if the player doesn't think of that plan. And B, even if you don't want to say that, that line is there for you to read. Once you read that line, even if you don't choose that option, you know that information. So that trick worked out really well for us. That kept dialogue short, and some crucial information is just things you would naturally read as dialogue choices. It's things you're ready to read. The downside, unfortunately, the ironic downside of this is where I see in a lot of playthroughs and testers, people are so used to these walls of texts full of pointless, redundant information. When a dialogue comes up, a lot of players, that includes me too, a lot of players, they phase out. They don't listen. It's like they don't pay attention to the dialogue. They're like,
okay.
just
When you
give me the
get like a
gist of it.
text of this size.
Yeah,
keep
but
talking.
you do expect that size. So when they're playing Expeditions Rome, what you unfortunately get is a lot of our players initially don't realize that they need to pay attention to dialogue, and they miss crucial information.
Okay, yeah, I know
And
what you
they're
mean.
like, and like 5 minutes later, something happens, and they're like, I don't understand why this is happening. It comes out of nowhere. The game never tells you anything about this. Well, yeah, it does, but you were not paying attention.
Yeah,
And I'm not like, I'm not being a dick here. Like, it's not their fault. It's the way the industry trained us. I would do the same thing. But it is what it is. You need to pay attention to dialogue. Most of the dialogue in Rome is not pointless. It refers to something. It tells you something. At least that's what we try to do. Hopefully, we succeeded.
It's good. I mean, I'm a little bit of a special snowflake when it comes to that because I love lore, I love story, I love to delve into the conversations and pay highly attention to it. And especially now with you implementing this amazing tool of the Twitch integration, where chat can decide what the answer shall be, I can even more sit back and kind of enjoy the story chat is telling me by using all the past passages and paths our domina has taken, and therefore I can pay high attention, and I always kind of try to throw bits of information to chat and be like, well, think of what's happening there and rethink what happened back there and then decide here. And it's a really super fun interactive storytelling for me as a player and for the audience as a viewer. So that idea was chef's kiss genius. And one other thing that I wanted to ask but just slipped out of my mind. I'll get there, probably. My brain will get back to it. One last crucial thing. How many hours did you guys in total... not how many hours. How many words in total did you write into this whole story thing? Did you keep track of that?
Well, I mean, we have to. Not in total. I don't know how many words we cut from the story or how many words we... Oh, give or take. It's we know the actual number from our localization partners. It's just they have to know how many words they have to translate. So it's roughly 300,000 words.
300,000 words in sizes of Lord of the Ring books. How many think would it be?
Either 3 relatively big novels or 4 normal-sized novels, like
wow,
kind of short or normal size short to normal size novels. Like it's definitely 3 novels. It's like a trilogy, and it has 3 acts. So
I'm excited. I
um,
think I'm feeling like we're kind of at the end of Act 1 right here with the siege thing. And this whole siege system with the different angles of attacks and whatnot. It is so tempting and amazing. And you feel like you actually are like conquering wall bits by wall bits and moving forward.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
this overlapped conquer system, let's call it system, is just genius. Chad, one last call out to you. If you have any more questions, let me know. I will head it over to Fasih. One last question to you from my side as an honored guest
Okay.
here. And taking your time to hang out over here is, first of all, I need you to pick a color. I hope I can present them in a decent way.
That's a very easy question. It's red.
Red, like the blood of the enemies.
In my mind, since I was a little kid, red is objectively the best color in the world. I don't know why the other colors are still trying, so it's red.
Okay. Then, let me just write this down here. See. There we go. Because we have a little special thing going on here that we're gonna give away to the community at some point is
Oh,
proper Viking shield, and
nice.
there you go.
But I think I appeared twice there.
You could be.
Because you did that. You already did that, so...
No, it's just once. It's okay.
Oh, it's interesting. Okay.
I know we talked about it, but probably I forgot to put it on there and just reminded myself that I should do that. That's a way of us saying thank you and honor you for your time and presence.
No worries.
So, Rulin asks, have they been talked already about the upcoming patch? Do we know anything about the upcoming patch? Is there any crucial information or crucial part of what will be updated?
The upcoming patch is upcoming. We'll fix a lot of things. Hopefully, I think it will release very, very soon. The reason why we are not releasing it yet is, well, whenever you're patching something, there's a danger of introducing other problems. Actually, you always introduce other problems. So in testing, you find out about those problems, and then you have to fix them too. So we don't want to release a huge patch and make things actually worse for people. So, but it will be released very soon, I think, the big patch that is not a hot fix, and it will fix a lot of things, hopefully. That being said, the changes to the Legion system, Legion combat system, that will come later.
Okay.
That will probably not be part of this patch because we want to make those Legion battles better somehow, or more expressive, more readable for people. Because for a lot of people, like one weird thing about Rome is that it doesn't tell you a lot about its systems, and we are working on correcting that.
Okay.
Like you have to really, really read all of the tooltips and take wild guesses sometimes. That was the problem, one of the problems with the Legion battles. Like nobody clearly understands how they work, and as a result, as an unfortunate result, if you don't really understand how it works, you can't really make decisions meaningfully. So we are trying to fix that and make it better.
I'm grinning here because we take the Roman battle decisions based on roleplay. As we're seeing the situations and see, okay, they have riders and they have this and that, and then chat kind of decides on based on what the icons represent and what fits from a roleplay perspective as of doing commands. They don't even pay attention on the numbers and whatever. It's just super funny. One last questions before I say thank you and bid you farewell is
Sure.
Soviet asks, what rank is the main character and how big was the Roman legion?
Well, around the time our game takes place, the Roman legion is 6,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Of those, 4,800 are actual combat capable soldiers,
Mm-hmm.
legionnaires. The rest is support staff, mostly slaves. But again, like what it means to be a slave in Rome is very different to what it means to be a slave in colonial times in America, for instance.
Okay.
Like slaves were paid, and it was not really fine to not pay slaves for their work, for instance. So they're more like workers with a crappy labor contract, so to speak. Um, and the the player character, he very soon becomes at the beginning of the game a legatus, which is basically someone who's in charge of a legion. Uh, a general
Mm-hmm.
would be probably, or I don't know, something close to a general, a mayor or a major or some general. It doesn't really correspond to our understanding of military organization. At one point in the game, again, minor spoilers, but you may have already deduced this from the interface itself, where when you want to start a Legion mission, it asks you to choose a Legion, but you have only one Legion.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point in the game, you will get to uh, you may have multiple legions. That is not exactly, historically accurate. Uh, it is
Then
less
again, it's a game.
plausible, because basically in Rome, each consul had his own legion. Each commander had his own legion. A consul could command two legions, and that was called a consular army.
Okay.
Uh, but for the sake of drama and story, we kind of bent the truth a little bit. But technically, you're a general in the game.
Well, they
I hope
got your
this answers.
they got your answer for that. One last question just came out to my brain. Is did you get any backlash for having a female main character, as in, oh, female leading a legion? What? This never happened.
I
I
mean,
mean, I think it
yes.
never happened. I don't know. I don't care. It's a
Uh,
game.
to our knowledge, it never happened, and it is highly implausible. Um, but yeah, of course, like some people were not really happy about that part of the game. Some people were not really happy about the fact that there are women in the game. Uh,
What?
it,
Okay.
I would say it was a vocal minority
Okay. Very good.
that is very vocal about that. And there were some ideas as to why we did this kind of thing. And
I
well,
enjoy it. I like
I
it.
like at a certain level, I understand if people don't like this on face value, because we do think representation in media is an important thing. Like that being said, if you do it in a clumsy way, if you are going through a checklist of characters to include in the story without actually organically including them in the story, it feels bad. It doesn't help anyone. We try to not do that in Rome. Um, we try to justify uh, the existence of our female characters. Like
Mm-hmm.
Julia is, for instance, she's not like everyone says she's the Roman Mulan, but she's not really Roman Mulan. It has nothing to do with Mulan's reasons of joining the military, and she's also disguised as a man. She's not walking around as a woman. And the other female character we have, Daenerys, is Scythian, and they were fine with women fighting, and she's also a slave, a gladiator. So we don't really have, uh, as far as NPCs go, we don't really have female characters running around doing non-historically accurate things.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hire a female centurion, for instance. That will
Okay.
never come up in the list. The other thing people were angry about was, some people were angry about was, like you said, the possibility of choosing a female character. And for us, that's a role-playing thing. Like, you create a
Of course.
character, and
Yeah.
choosing your gender is the most basic thing you can do. I personally don't like it when you choose a female character and the game doesn't react to that. So we address that to the best of our ability and budget and resources. Like, the game actually, I think, changes meaningfully as much as we can do if you choose a female character. It's not like you're playing an entirely different story, because we also didn't want this to be some kind of wall, some kind of punishment for you for choosing a female character or something. It's roughly the same
Mm-hmm.
story, but people's reactions and some entire scenes change. Solutions for entire quests change because of your gender. And yes, we do know a female legatus in Rome is historically significantly less plausible. We do know that. But this is the story of an extraordinary person. And I do understand if it feels, if you don't like this, if it's like, if you think this is too far across the line of probability for me, plausibility for me, that's okay, but we don't force anyone to choose a female character to begin with. You can simply choose
Exactly.
a male character and ignore that part of the game quite, safely, I guess. And some people are kind of angry because we give the option. And yeah, I don't know what to say to those people, but
It's all good. It's their opinion. We have to live with it, and I think the game does it in a very plausible and alive feeling way. Like, they're themselves wondering, huh? A female character is now the legatus of this legion at the very
yeah,
beginning. Like, yeah, but you're under my protection. This is a special situation, and causes for special actions. Story done.
yeah.
Very good.
It was never the case. All I can say is, like, we never sat down. I never remember sitting down and saying, "Oh, we need to have this kind of character in the game and this kind of character in the game just for the sake of having it, because we have to push this kind of thought agenda or whatever." No, that was never the case. Like, we want to tell a story, and this is our story. There's no ulterior motive of behind that.
And you did a phenomenal job, Fasih. Big applause. Thank you 1,000 times for joining us, taking your precious time to hang out with us and
My
answer
pleasure.
all these questions. I think I will picture the whole game now from complete different eyes. And even I did not know that it could be possible, because it's already for me Game of the Year game. Even see it as even a more precious little gem of the year. And I can
Thank
wait
you.
for future content to come. I can wait for the next projects that you guys will work on. And hopefully, and I'll take you by the word that you have written me, is next year, maybe in 2 years, when we visit Istanbul, I'm gonna come and knock at your door.
Yeah, be my guest, literally.
Gladly, gladly. Thank you kindly. All the best, and skål to you
My
and
pleasure.
to the dev teams.
Take care.
Chad, it was wonderful. Thank you kindly for hanging out here. Soviet Marshal, sorry for not delivering that question, because I somehow couldn't figure out the question behind it. I just shot a game up. My god, this is beautiful. The armor of the faces, everything looks so beautiful. But will there be something to do after the campaign? Because worked on Rise of probably not. I guess there will be end of story and that's it. There will be not an endless mode where you just keep going or something like that. That was really interesting. Thank you both. Well, thank you guys for hanging out and let's come down here. Table, please come on, go down. Thank you. That was interesting. I always love to have developers on the show and be able to ask them questions and see the picture or the thoughts behind them, and therefore ultimately kind of understand the game itself a little bit better, or like the thought process behind it. So I hope you guys are liking this kind of dev talks. If yes, let me know, so I will try my best to bring in people and to hang out with us and talk about games and their productions. And also tell me if you want or would love to see some improvement on some agendas. I don't know, maybe my questions are boring, and or maybe my presentation is not like well done enough. I don't know. Whatever information I get, the better I can do it, and the better it will get and become.